Now, correspondent Ashish Joshi is here with us. And Ashish, where do things go from here?
We will wait for a response from the White House and President Trump to the response from Pyongyang. They have issued a statement which is, as you'd expect, typically belligerent, promising a response to all the countries that backed these new sanctions and calling it an act of war, saying these are the harshest sanctions which amount to an economic blockade. What they are, they target the petroleum, crude oil, and also foreign workers who leave North Korea to work abroad and who bring in some sort of foreign exchange back into the country. So they have up to 24 months before they will have to return to North Korea. And these sanctions now, there is a warning that if North Korea persists with its nuclear program, then these sanctions go up in response to the tests carried out. But the language coming out from Pyongyang, as you would expect, completely bellicose in the way it said, now this is an act of war and we will respond. But so far, President Trump has been on TV this morning in America. He hasn't said anything in reaction to what has been said. It should also be remembered that the Security Council, this time a unanimous vote, backed also by China and Russia, who are traditionally allies of North Korea.
OK, Ashish, thanks very much. Now, at least 37 people are thought to have died in a fire that tore through a shopping centre in the Philippines. It's feared that many of the dead are call centre staff for an American firm, but officials are yet to enter the section of that centre where they were trapped. President Rodrigo Duterte visited relatives outside the burning building. The number of people who have died in flash floods and mudslides in the Philippines has risen to 200, with fears it could increase even further. Rescuers are still to reach some of those affected in various areas on Mindanao Island. Sky's Phil Edwards has this report.
After the deluge and devastating loss of life of any sort, while so many are missing, feared dead. Phil Edwards, Sky News.
European citizens should be charged £10 for a visa to enter Britain when we leave the European Union. That's according to a report backed by a group of pro-Brexit Conservative MPs. The proposals, drafted by South Thanet MP Craig McKinley, suggest a system similar to the United States, and it says that it could raise around £150 million a year to spend on high-tech border controls. 2 men have died in a multi-vehicle crash on the M40. Emergency services were called to the scene in Oxfordshire just before 11:40 p.m. On Saturday. Thames Valley Police haven't named the 2 men who died, but said they were a 60-year-old man from Oxfordshire and a 29-year-old from Warwickshire. Another man was taken to hospital with serious leg injuries. They're appealing for anyone who may have witnessed what happened to come forward. More people in London will go to church this Christmas than any other city in Britain. A Sky Data survey suggests that young people are least likely to attend a Christmas service, just 3% of 18 to 24-year-olds. Well, across age groups, nearly 1 in 10 of us will be in church on Christmas Day itself. But in London, that figure rises to 14%, making the capital the most godly city in Britain, although the survey doesn't include Northern Ireland. Jack Valero from Catholic Voices says a lack of trust is putting people off religion, particularly the younger generations.
I think young people relate to integrity and connection, and there's been a lack of trust in institutions this year, I think, whether it's the churches or the police or politicians. And I think this also affects us. How do we regain this trust? I think this is really important. And it's only people in the church who have integrity who are going to attract back the young people.
London Zoo has reopened this morning after a fire in the animal adventure area. The zoo confirmed that 9-year-old Misha the aardvark had died and that 4 meerkats who remain unaccounted for are presumed dead. Now, about an hour ago, Santa Claus began his annual trip around the world, delivering presents to those youngsters who've been good this year. And as you can see coming up, he's currently crossing. He's been closely tracked by the North American Aerospace Defense Command, which is charged with ensuring that he has a smooth flight. There he is, well on his way.
This is a huge day. You know, what's really cool is the technology that we use to track Santa is the same technology that we do each and every day to safeguard North America. And so it's so neat with radars and aircraft. So we're going to watch him all around the world and make sure that he's at the right place at the right time to deliver the gifts to all of our amazing families across the world.
And the elves have just released footage of Santa's preparations before he started his long journey. He has to double check all of the letters and lists that he's received and make sure he still has all the parcels packed. Father Christmas also recorded a special message from his sleigh for children around the world before he set off.
Ai, otapa ihan rauhassa siellä vaan noin. Ai. Hyvää joulua. God jul. Heat joule. Frohe Weihnachten. Prettige Kerst. Joy Noel. Feliz Navidad. And a merry, merry Christmas to all of you. Merry Christmas.
Amazing. No idea what he's saying, but he looks very festive, and there he is off on his sleigh to deliver all those presents ahead of tomorrow. Now, Theresa May has used her annual message to urge the country to take pride in its Christian heritage while paying tribute to the armed forces and emergency services. We've also heard from Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, who's focused on the need for society to become more compassionate and looking out for those who are cut off and lonely. Sky's Katerina Vitozzi has this report.
Have you won over the DUP yet, Prime Minister?
At home and abroad, it's been a year of diverse challenges for the Prime Minister hunting. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News.
Now, there have also been messages from the SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon and Liberal Democrat leader Vince Cable.
Community has always been at the heart of liberalism, and this is a time of year to make that commitment real. That's why I'm asking you to take out some time this Christmas and help with a local charity near you.
I also know that for many people, for example, workers in our emergency services, our health service and our armed forces, Christmas isn't a holiday at all. Your hard work is appreciated all the year round, but it is particularly valued at Christmas time.
Now let's talk about fox hunting now, shall we? Let's go live now to Westminster and I'll speak to our political correspondent Lewis Goodall. Good news for many.
Yes, especially good news for foxes this Christmas, at least, seems to be neutralised.
OK, Lewis, thank you. This is Sky News. Coming up in the sport, Serena Williams sets the date for her return to tennis. Now, Theresa May has used her annual message to urge the country to take pride in its Christian heritage. 2017 has been a turbulent year for the Prime Minister, with a disappointing general election for her party and tough Brexit negotiations. So how has she done overall? Well, let's speak to John Rentoul, chief political commentator at The Independent. He joins me now. Some might say that Theresa May seems to be a cat with 9 lives. She keeps on coming back.
Well, she's ended the year on a relatively high note. But, I mean, looking back, I mean, 2017 was an extraordinary year for her. I mean, she started as mistress of all she surveyed. She was 20 points or more ahead in the opinion polls, which is what tempted her to call that general election, which turned out to be so disastrous. I mean, she just went from hero to zero in 7 weeks. And ended up nearly a broken woman. I mean, you know, George Osborne called her a dead woman walking after that. Everyone assumed, you know, when they saw the opinion poll on election night that she would have to stand down. And yet, you know, by the end of the year, she'd managed to claw back some of her position, some of her authority, and secure a breakthrough in the Brexit negotiations, which are very important.
She certainly did. And looking ahead now to the new year, do you think she will manage to secure a decent trade deal?
Well, that is a huge question for 2018, isn't it? I mean, the last few years have just been so turbulent in politics. I mean, nobody expected the result of the 2015 election. No one expected the result of the Brexit referendum in 2016, or indeed Donald Trump's victory in America. And, so we thought we were going to get a break in 2017 because at least we thought, things were just going to carry on. And then she went and called that election. So who knows what's going to happen in 2018? I mean, the assumption is that she'll carry on being Prime Minister because the Conservatives don't want to try to replace her. They certainly don't want a general election. The assumption is that Jeremy Corbyn will carry on as leader of the Labour Party. And the assumption is that, having got this far on the Brexit talks, she will be able to do some kind of trade deal by the October deadline that Michel Barnier, the EU negotiator, has set. But one of those assumptions, at least, is going to turn out to be wrong. I'm sure of it.
There have been tensions this year, haven't there, in her cabinet? She's lost in recent days one of her closest allies, in Damien Green. What impact is that likely to have, if any?
Well, that's a very interesting question because, Damien Green was very important to her, but in a sort of behind-the-scenes role, he was very important in just sort of driving through the government business. I mean, she decided after the election to get rid of her political advisors who'd run a very tight, politically centralised ship and run a much more conventional cabinet government where Damien Green chaired a lot of cabinet committees and actually saw through a lot of government business. The question is, who's she going to replace him with? But she goes into the new year in a much stronger position, not least because of the Brexit breakthrough. But she'll be able to reshuffle her cabinet. I mean, whether that's going to be a major reshuffle or not, we don't know. But she certainly will be able to promote some younger ministers, and I think that will refresh and strengthen her government.
And very quickly, do you think Jeremy Corbyn is still a threat to her?
Well, of course he is. I mean, that's why the Conservatives don't want to have a general election, because they think that Jeremy Corbyn would win it in the short term. But their hope is that if Theresa May delivers a reasonably successful Brexit, and that means one that isn't chaos and doesn't lead us crashing out, then the Conservative Party may be able to rebuild, probably under a different leader, in time for a general election. But that's 4 years away.
OK, well, thanks ever so much for your expertise. I remember sitting in this very spot the day after that election and everyone said she'd have to resign.
Including me.
Indeed, and she held on. Thank you so much. You're watching Sky News. Let's get a check on the sport now.
This programme is brought to you by Vitality Health and Life Insurance. Getting active brings its own rewards.
Billy no, mates.
Good afternoon. After being out of tennis for nearly a year, Serena Williams will return to competitive action next week. There's more live now on Sky Sports News, and we're back later this hour.
And that's the end of the show. I'm off for a biscuit. Anyone fancy?
Now we're taking you live to Iraq now. These are live pictures of Iraqi Christians celebrating Mass, of course, ahead of Christmas. This is just on the outskirts of Mosul. Huge swathes of the country were taken over by Islamic State. And of course, they were defeated earlier on this year. It was a long and bloody battle for Mosul. But in the end, of course, militants were forced out of their stronghold. And you can see these pictures now. A mass in the area. These are Iraqi Christians celebrating just outside of the city. Let's take a look at the weather now, shall we?
From a fresh coastal breeze to watching the sunset on the Australian outback.
Well, Christmas Day will be mild and breezy with spells of rain, I'm afraid, for northern and western parts. There is a chance of snow later on in the day, mainly over northern hills. Back to Christmas Eve, and it will be cloudy, mild and breezy. A few spots of rain and drizzle are likely for windward coasts and hills, with heavier rain for Ireland, Northern Ireland and northwest England. It's going to be a wet night for Santa, I'm afraid, as he crosses Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland and Ireland. It'll turn cold and clear later on.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
This is Sky News coming up in a festive edition of Swipe. Could those presents under your Christmas tree be able to actually spy on you? Welcome back. The top stories here on Sky News. North Korea has described new United Nations sanctions as a declaration of war. The Security Council voted unanimously on Friday to impose tough restrictions on Pyongyang over its ballistic missile program. At least 37 people are thought to have died in a fire that tore through a shopping centre in the Philippines. Theresa May has used her annual Christmas message to pay tribute to the armed forces and emergency services. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn focused on the need for society to become more compassionate. But it's time now for Sky's technology show Swipe. Here's Gemma with a Christmas special.
Welcome to Swipe. And remember to follow us on Twitter at Sky News Swipe. Bye-bye.
This is Sky News. Coming up in the sport, Serena Williams sets a date for her return to tennis.
Partnership.co.uk.
Welcome back. Time now to get a check on the sport with Gavin.
Yes, after being out of tennis for nearly a year, Serena Williams will return to competitive action next weekend. Now, more over on Sky Sports News. Saracens have just beaten Leicester, by the way, in the rugby. We're back in an hour's time. See you in a bit.
Thanks very much for that. Now I want to bring you some ever so cute pictures now. In a bid to shift a few Christmas dinner pounds, one panda has started her New Year exercise regime early. Now, unfortunately for Pupa, some of the trees she's climbing aren't always able to withstand her strength, but she has kept at it and really works at perfecting her somersault and practicing her bar routine. Now, her keepers say she is considered the most energetic panda at the zoo, with visitors giving her routine a perfect 10. And after a few crunches, she likes to reward herself with a well-earned post-workout snack and snooze.